Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are around the world. Thanks for joining today's webinar from Real Story Group about outbound marketing technology and its changing role in your new MarTech stack. It's a really exciting topic for us, and we've got Tony Byrne and Apoorv Durga from Real Story Group to take us through the majority of today's presentation. So welcome, and thank you for taking some time out of your day. We really do appreciate it. And as we get started, I just wanted to mention a couple things real quick. My name is Scott Dill. I'm on the business development team here, and if you ever have questions about Real Story Group during or after today's presentation, you can always email me at the email address listed here for me. But also, I wanted to mention that we will have time for direct questions for Tony and Apoorv at the end of today's session, and so you can enter those into the questions tab in your GoToWebinar control panel. Also, the slides for today's presentation will be available in the next couple of days, so we can send those to you. And then for our subscribers on the line, you will be able to access a recording of today's presentation in your subscriber library. So keep an eye out for that, as that will be made available to you towards the end of this week. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Tony and Apoorv to get us started here today. Guys?
Great, thanks, Scott. This is Tony Byrne. I'll just give you a little bit of background about the company. I founded it 21 years ago, really because of that quadrant you're seeing on the left. I thought that the existing analyst firms back then and still today were not doing a good job of covering the vendors. And then, particularly with respect to the kind of depth and technical expertise, we just thought that they were too shallow, but also just too much on the side of vendors. So we decided to create a different kind of analyst firm that would only work for you, the enterprise buyer, always on your side of the table. And so our research is known for being, I would say, more independent and tougher than you would typically see in the marketplace. And that's because we never, ever advise vendors speak at their event, write white papers and all the other things that you see traditional analyst firms do. So we started out covering web content management, and then over the years started really covering almost the whole MarTech universe, at least the major vendors that our enterprise buyers are interested in. We do this now across what we call 10 different streams. And you'll see that one of these streams, the dark green one, is what we'll be talking about today, outbound marketing platforms, which is a really interesting market. It's something we've been covering now for about 12 years, seen a lot of evolution in this market. This is one way of putting all these vendors together in this kind of a mock subway map or tube map that you can download from our website, and shows which vendors are doing which things. At the same time, I think that, and it shows you that obviously there's major vendors with email offerings and then other independent vendors that do campaign and email and outbound marketing as well. So it's a typical kind of marketplace, in fact, a fairly mature marketplace. But we're going to turn this on its side a little bit later and look at this more from a stat perspective, which I think is going to be much more meaningful in terms of telling you sort of what's going on in this world. So first, I'll talk a little bit about how outbound marketing is changing in an omnichannel world, and we're going to take really a structural approach to this that I think you'll find interesting. Then my colleague Apoorv is going to take over and talk about how the marketplace is changing as well. And then for those of you looking to select this technology, we'll wrap up with a quick primer on that subject before we identify key takeaways. Once again, there'll definitely be time to answer your questions, so feel free to put any kind of question or comment, something you disagree with, an anecdote you'd like to share. You can do that in the questions tab of your GoToWebinar control panel. Okay, so let's get into it. Outbound marketing in an omnichannel world. So I think many of you have experienced this. Apoorv recently experienced this, where he got an email from Amazon with some silicone sealant that was offered at one price in the email and then a different price when you actually click through to the website. So how could that be? From even Amazon, has this problem, and our expectations, of course, are set by Amazon and Netflix and others who have really generally been pretty good about this, but you can see even Amazon fails at providing this kind of coherence across your experience, even with respect to some core data like pricing. So, as a customer, of course, you're actually going to ask, well, how on earth could this happen? But the reality is that this kind of mistake is almost baked into the system, the way traditional stacks have evolved. So here's a stack model akin to probably what we would be talking about with you had we been working together in the early 2010s. In other words, you have these engagement channels at the top with a proliferating series of touch points, interaction and delivery environments from advertising, e-commerce, distribution, contact centers. That these are touch points on your side, and then these key colored boxes here, content engagement management platforms. And most of us have spent most of the 2010s kind of professionalizing these environments, bulking them up, modernizing them, getting good at them within that particular channel. So that's the key thing, is that what we've essentially done over the years is kind of built up these little silos, and that wasn't always necessarily, totally exposed us, because we got good at things like web content management, we got good at things like social engagement, but there were problems lurking underneath the surface. And one of the main problems was that each one of these platforms, not just outbound messaging, but each one of these colored boxes had this kind of cabooses of services like content management, customer data management, personalization rules, campaign planning, campaign analytics, that were all limited to that particular silo. And so you potentially then were presenting different views of the world to customers. So let's just take a look at, this is a screenshot from MailChimp, a kind of mass market B2C. And you can see it's got content in it, it's got customer data, it's got some campaign planning and some campaign analytics. This other marketing automation platform has content, data, personalization rules, campaign planning and analytics, all kind of built in within that particular platform. So now the benefit to this is that if I'm only working in this channel, in theory, I've got everything I need. The problem is that by embedding or coupling all of these services within, you risk that the data, the content, the rules, the planning, and the analytics is going to be disconnected from the other channels where the person is coming at you. And this is particularly, I think, got accentuated, this problem during COVID, where people were showing up in all kinds of new places and new channels and wanting to interact with you, the enterprise, and assuming that they would have a coherent experience. And so, this is just a build to show you the earlier point that, you have all of these services and you can imagine the inevitable results. And I think a lot of you are dealing with this right now. The problem is that many of you are dealing with this by trying to do these kind of lateral integrations, and it's not working very well. Do you have a Salesforce connector? Can I connect this to that? Can I connect? And it becomes this sort of spaghetti integration architecture that is, for many of you, really reached its limit, and in some cases, getting actually diminishing returns. So there's a different architectural model that we've been proposing for the last couple of years. We call this a more composable stack. And you still have the three rows at the top: engagement, interaction, delivery, and then engagement services, engagement channels, interaction, delivery, and then engagement services at the enterprise level. But then below, you have enterprise foundation services that are abstracted from or decoupled from these engagement services. So you have a column of content and information management on the left. In the center, very important services around data, and then to the right around decisioning, all ideally with some enterprise integration layer in between. And this is really the only way to do omnichannel in the modern world, is to disengage some of these services from your engagement environments so that you can apply them more in an enterprise way and have a more coherent customer experience across them. So outbound marketing in the future, whether it's a B2C email service platform or it's a B2B marketing automation platform, you're increasingly going to want to get your content from an enterprise content store, your customer data from maybe a CDP, to get intelligence from a broader enterprise data intelligence operation, and personalization, orchestration, and testing rules likely coming from somewhere else, so that you can do things like synchronize your media, your like social retargeting with your outbound campaigns. This is already happening, and many of you are trying to do this. This is just sort of laying the theoretical foundations for this. But this is also then having an incredible impact on the market. And one of the more interesting things that we've seen in a recent Martech, Martech.org survey was that the #1 platform for replacement due for this year was outbound messaging. And I think it's because this market has undergone a lot of change. There are some modern players, there are some older players, there's been some mergers and acquisition, and many of you have an ill-fitting solution. So what are your choices? With that, I'll turn it over to Apurv, who covers this marketplace for Real Story Group. They're going to tell you what's going on. And Apurv, just tell me when you want me to move the slide.
Thank you, Tony. Yeah, so that was an excellent overview of outbound marketing in an omni-channel world. So let's see what it means in terms of the evolving marketplace. First of all, this is a very rapidly changing marketplace with new entrants emerging all the time. Right, so going back to the subway map analogy, this is like a subway line that's perpetually under construction, with new vendors emerging, existing ones getting acquired, changing names, and so on. In some ways, this is good because newer products put pressure on existing vendors, or newer vendors put pressure on existing vendors, both in terms of pricing and capabilities. So existing vendors need to improve their capabilities, they need to decrease their pricing or optimize their pricing, and so on and so forth. In addition, it has also led to better scope clarity, and instead of focusing on many capabilities, many of these newer vendors want to focus only on email. They may make marketing claims otherwise, but focus is really email, and you should note that. And for you, what that means is that you need to think of outbound marketing in terms of a stack and partner with specialized vendors or specialized tools for a lot of functionality that was up till now part of email or marketing automation tool. So this includes functionalities such as forms management, and we'll see some screenshots in later slides. But forms management is an important functionality. So it's in this newer world where acquiring first-party data becomes very important. You need to create forms for all kinds of data capture and not just email subscription, right? So it makes sense to partner with a specialized form service. Social messaging has branched out on its own, so it's a completely specialized service now with the different social media marketing platforms out there. SMS, MMS, text messaging, in-app messaging, that's another important functionality that needs specialized products. You can often combine text messaging with email as part of overall campaigns or journeys, and we'll see some example there, but then it's outside the scope of these email marketing platforms. And then content and asset management is another functionality where it's very important to get your content from external content management or asset management repositories, because you don't want to be duplicating it within your email marketing or marketing automation platforms. And so this has led to the fading of marketing automation myth, meaning all those all-in-one products that claim to do all your marketing under a single product or using a single product aren't really a thing anymore. Sure, for small and medium businesses or SMBs, maybe, but for large complex enterprises, you really need to focus only on email from these vendors and look at products as part of a larger stack. And therefore, there's an expectation of deeper wettings, or in other words, doing a proper test-based, agile, adaptive, iterative process for selecting these products. Tony wrote the book on technology selection, and we'll talk about that process in a bit. So let's look at some examples in next slides. Tony, next slide, please.
Yeah, it's showing the, I have it showing the SMS slide.
Okay,
Scott, is
so it's not changing. Okay, so I'll pick from my memory. Okay, so yeah, so that's a screenshot. I see it now, Tony. So it's a screenshot showing how SMS and MMS, for that matter, are just another endpoint in a customer journey, right? So here's a screenshot from a specialized tool that shows you how campaign, emails, and SMS are combined as part of an overall broader journey. So it makes sense to keep it outside of your email platform and then combine using some sort of a journey orchestration or a campaign management platform. The next slide is an example, is yet another example of how some functionality is.
This is the form slide.
Yeah, okay. So I don't know why it's not appearing for me. Okay, now it has appeared. So forms functionality, like I described, it's an important functionality. So I would add landing pages to it, right? So forms management or forms creation, creating forms for all kinds of data capture, first party data capture, zero party data capture, and then building landing pages, doing A/B testing, that kind of functionality. So this is a screenshot of that. The next one is an example of
social publishing.
Yeah, so social publishing. So again, social publishing requires specialized tools, as this screenshot shows. So for example, ability to publish content to your Facebook pages or publishing it to your Instagram channels or what have you, right? So instead of doing it from within an email platform with limited capability, makes sense to go the specialized route. The next screenshot is an example of authoring and content management functionality. Now, this is really important because a lot of time when you create email campaigns, you end up inputting or entering content in your email management interface, right? And that means your content is duplicated across multiple channels. And if you were to edit content in one channel, you would have to edit it in another channel, and so on and so forth, right? So there's a lot of content duplication, asset duplication, lack of asset management capabilities within the email platform, and so on. So we see a lot of customers actually now, especially the mature ones, trying to get this content from their omni-channel content platform instead of replicating it within the email management platform or marketing automation platform. And finally, the last example is for a campaign management functionality outside of your email platform or marketing platform. The fact is that a lot of these email marketing or marketing automation platforms provide some sort of a campaign palette, but that is mostly limited to email. Whereas in an omni-channel world, you really need to think of multiple channels, multiple touch points with customers. And so email is just one of the channels. There are multiple channels, like we saw SMS, social publishing, and so on. So it probably makes sense to do campaign management also outside of your email or marketing automation tools, right? So okay, with those trends in mind and the fact that there are a ton of products out there, each claiming to be the leader, challenger, best, largest, biggest, or some combination of these, how do you go about selecting these products? So Tony, back to you for taking us through that. Meanwhile, I will look at the questions.
Great, thanks, Apoorv. So it's you want to pay better attention, I think, this time than to the last time you did this. Not necessarily that you made a bad choice, but it's become much more complicated world now. And so, as Apoorv mentioned, we recently wrote a book called The Right Way to Select Technology. It's a more agile-ish process applying design thinking. And I won't go through it in great detail here. We have other webinars on this you can find on our website, but the important thing is to create your own user stories and to make sure that once you get past proposals and demos, you do a hands-on bake-off. In other words, actually test drive the car before you buy it. A lot of people think you can't do this with outbound marketing and messaging platforms. That's not true. You very definitely can, including using dummy data and all sorts of other things. We've done this very successfully with many of our subscribers, really coach them through how to do this so that they're sure that they're making the best choice, again, by having more of a test drive sort of motif. So you have a lot of different suppliers in the market. Many of them are long in the tooth. Some of them are newer and can live in this sort of composable stack world that we've been describing. Roughly speaking, you can divide the world into B2C oriented email service providers and B2B oriented marketing automation platforms. Both of them have tried to be kind of a stack in the box, but particularly on the B2B side, really just trying to become a more omnibus marketing platform, and particularly for larger enterprises, that doesn't really work anymore. So both of these markets, I would say, are under some stress. There's a lot of technical debt among the older established players, and a lot of pressure really coming from two sides. One are a number of upstart vendors, because it's fairly easy to join this market. And then two, some newer providers that have been around maybe for 6-8 years that have much more modern cloud native platforms, are more CDP friendly, and can work more in this composable stack. So you really have a lot of choices, I would say, roughly among what I would describe as legacy, modern, and upstart. And you'll have to sort of figure out where you fit there. So how do you figure this out? We're really big believers in understanding what are the marketing scenarios that you really need to fulfill. And for this particular channel or subway line, there's 3 groups of scenarios: B2B marketing automation, B2B campaign and offer management, which is effectively personalization, and then multi-channel capabilities that you may or may not need that might span either B2B or B2C. And so this actual screenshot is from Real Story Group's Real Quadrant Shortlist Generator, which is a tool on our website you can try out, where rather than getting a static industry diagram 2x2 chart matrix that you would typically see from a major analyst firm, you get a much more customized for your particular scenarios and strategic considerations, much more customized shortlist. And so this is the way that most of our subscribers actually access our research. So let's talk about key takeaways and then see what other questions you might have, and then we'll go from there. So the scope of outbound digital communications is narrowing. In other words, there's a tighter focus, I think, on just campaigns and messaging and the data and the content and a number of other things residing elsewhere. This is good for you if you believe in a composable stack. Messaging and campaigns need to live within your broader marketing CX stack. So to the extent that this narrow focus on messaging and/or campaigns is there, needs to be able to integrate with the other tools, and in particular your enterprise foundation. The major suite players in particular, but even some of the minor players, claim that they are outbound messaging tools are actually omni-channel. They generally are not. They generally are focused on just messaging and inbound personalization and inbound experiences, and personalizing or doing recommendations, say in an e-commerce environment, typically fall outside of the scope of them. So you have to be very careful when a vendor says cross-channel. What they really mean is typically is cross-channel with respect to outbound messaging. So you do want to consider newer, more focused market entrants in addition to any incumbent players. I think you'll find, for example, more CDP-friendly offerings, and also more personalization-oriented ability to work with external content and asset repositories, all the things that Apoorv mentioned. Definitely use an agile test-based approach to selecting any MarTech. We believe so strongly in this, we wrote a book on it, but it includes marketing automation or email service providers, where you definitely want to be hands-on before you buy. And then, as we would say in almost any marketing technology, keep your marketers close, make sure that this test-based selection process works for the people who have to create and execute and measure these campaigns, but also keep your data engineers even closer, because your ESP or your map or whatever outbound marketing platform you have in the future is going to have to live in a much richer, more complicated enterprise data environment, where they're getting data about customers from other locations, and they're having to produce metrics for more comprehensive externalized analytics services that are going to give you much better view of how effective you were than just the localized analytics within your outbound marketing platform. So this requires really keeping a focus, as always, on data integration, and you'll need data engineering support to be able to do that. You also need a platform that is also amenable to that, and once again, this is an area where many of the legacy vendors from our research come up a little bit short. Okay. So we'll get to the questions in a minute. I see a couple are filtering in. But first I wanted to just sort of let you know there's 3 ways to work with Real Story Group. The first is to just subscribe to any of our research, either 1 stream or 2 streams or 3 streams. You get access to the Real Quadrant generator, as well as get access to us when you have questions. Really good for helping you shape an independent shortlist and then validate the choices you make going forward. Some of our larger subscribers opt to get a full stack package where they license all of our research, and then that gives them access to a lot of us to help them figure out their broader stack strategies. And then a subset of those join our exclusive customer-only MarTech Leadership Council. We're meeting in September in St. Louis is our next meeting. We're going to be talking a lot about marketing operations, but also about omnichannel personalization, a lot of other issues that are top of mind to these leaders at major companies. So if you're interested in joining that, feel free to check in with Scott. And so Scott, you can just talk about next steps while Apoorv and I take a look at the questions.
Great, thanks to both Tony and Apoorv for taking us through the presentation. And as Tony mentioned, if you want to learn more about anything that they just addressed, specifically how you can engage further with Real Story Group beyond these webinars, you can email me at explore@realstorygroup.com. You can also download excerpts, not just from the outbound marketing technology research that we offer, but any of the other research areas that we cover, and also try out those interactive tools such as the Real Quadrant and real-time vendor comparison tool. You can also take a look at our webinar library that's available. We have a select number of recorded webinars available to the public, such as selecting the right CDP technology in your journey from DAM to omnichannel content management. So if those are things that you're thinking about along with outbound marketing technology, we invite you to take a look at those as well. With that, it does look like a couple questions have come in, so I'll send it back to you guys.
Yeah, I'll take the first 2 and then toss the third one over to you, Apoorv. The first one is, any reason Braze is not in the stack? That was just a mistake. We left their logo out. We are covering Braze. They often compete head-to-head with the likes of Iterable and MessageGears and others. They come out of the sort of SMS, MMS space originally, competed a lot with Twilio and have recently kind of expanded their remit. So an interesting company for sure. Paulo, do you have examples of newer ESPs that are friendly to DAM? For that, you're going to have to check out our research. So Paulo, if your company subscribes to us, just feel free to toss that question over to Scott and we will be happy to take care of it. I would say in general, there are some key attributes that you need to be able to do. One is to be able to search a remote DAM and also register the usage and potentially send back any derivatives that you would make. Derivatives and renditions are really critical in the omni-channel world. So there's a third question from Paula Apoorv. What do you make of Microsoft in this world? Like they are technically on the map. We didn't talk about them much. You don't always hear a lot about them. What is there just to say in general? Is this a big priority for Microsoft or?
Well, so with Microsoft, as with other suite vendors, I think it's not really a priority because they often bundle it as part of a larger suite, and then when you're talking of a more heterogeneous MarTech stack, it really isn't a very suitable option. However, if you were using a completely 100% Microsoft stack and with everything, including Microsoft CRM and Microsoft's TDP and so on and so forth, probably that could be an option.
Right, it's another one of those big, MarTech players where their outbound marketing platform is very closely aligned with their other systems. I think most particularly their kind of CRM and Salesforce automation platform as well. So yeah, that's a good point. Okay, well, we've reached the bottom of the half hour, so thanks again for joining in, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. For Scott and Apoorv, this is Tony Byrne from Real Story Group signing off for now. Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye now.